Plessy v. Ferguson, 1896. This was a Supreme Court decision that upheld the constitutionality of separate but equal. The court ruled that the 14th Amendment applied only to political and civil rights. It deprived the equal protection of laws guaranteed by the 14th Amendment. This case is important to the education of ELLs because it started the ideas of segregation and that there shouldn't be any in schools or in public. Meijer v. Nebraska, 1923. Nebraska passed a law not only allowing grade school students to learn any language other than English. The court declared this law unconstitutional because it violated the liberty protected by the 14th Amendment. This case is important to the education of ELLs because it allowed teachers the right to educate the youth in any language without being penalized for it. This allowed students to learn different languages in education and become bilingual. Farrington v. Taguchi, 1927. Hawaii legislature passed a law in which it regulated hours, textbooks, and curriculum in schools, which taught native language to students. The court indicated this was unreasonable and parents had control on how their children were educated. This case is important to the education of ELLs because it opened the doors to how children were educated and that they have the right to learn and grow in their native languages. The Independent School District v. Salvatierra in 1930. This was the first case in which Texas courts reviewed actions of school districts regarding the education of children of Mexican descent. This case was tried in Del Rio in 1930. From 1902 to 1940, Texas districts opened segregated schools for Hispanic children. This case is important to the education of ELLs because it brought attention for Mexican heritage students and their equal rights in education. Alvarez v. Lemon Grove, 1931. This was the first successful school desegregation court decision in the history of the United States. It occurred in 1931 in Lemon Grove, California, where the local school board wanted to build a separate school for children of Mexican descent. Supreme Court of San Diego County ruled that segregating Mexican and Mexican-American elementary school children was a violation of the state. This case is important to the education of ELLs because the whole community took action for their rights and demanded their rights for not only Mexicans in the education system, but for the Mexican population in California and the entire United States. Mendes v. Westminster School District, 1947. Sylvia Mendes was a child who was turned away from a California public school because it was a whites-only school and she was African American. Her father was furious and filed a lawsuit against Los Angeles area school districts. He won the class action lawsuit. California's governor signed a bill ending school segregation in California. This case is important to the education of ELLs because it allowed opportunities for all races to be in education and ended segregation in California. Brown v. Board of Education, 1954. This was a Supreme Court case which ruled that racial segregation of children in public schools was unconstitutional. This was one of the biggest movements in education and helped establish a separate but equal doctrine. This case is important to the education of ELLs because it ended all segregation in schools and gave ELLs the opportunity to learn with other students and gave everyone the equal opportunity to education. San Antonio Independent School District v. Rodriguez, 1973. This was a case in which the Supreme Court ruled that the San Antonio's ISD's financing system was a violation of the 14th Amendment of the United States. Lawsuit alleged that education was a fundamental right of all, and all students, no matter their wealth, were to be protected from discrimination. This case is important to the education of ELLs because it allowed for students from different backgrounds or financial means to become equal in the education system. Lau v. Nicholas, 1974. The U.S. Supreme Court, which ruled that a California school district receiving federal funds must provide non-English speaking students with instruction in the English language. This allowed ELLs to receive an equal education as non-ELLs. This case is important to the education of ELLs because it allowed equal opportunity for ELLs and the chance to receive potential and additional instruction in English learning. The No Child Left Behind Act of 2001. This was a U.S. act of Congress which focused on closing student achievement gaps by providing all students with fair and equal opportunities, to ensure the students who are disadvantaged and to make sure that they achieve academic proficiency. This case was important to the education of ELLs because these students were given equal opportunities as non-ELLs and provided with a fair education.